Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 13 of our reading of Alfred Hitchcock Presents Stories Not for the Nervous. Now, we started a new story the last time. We are going to go over the copyright information, though. It should be on the screen right now, and then we will basically go into more detail here, but okay, let's see. Here we go. It says here, the author gratefully acknowledges the invaluable assistance of Robert Arthur in the preparation of this volume. And you have all the information here, how it was produced by published by Dell Publishing, and it gives all the different copyright informations there. Actually, there's also a lot of acknowledgments. I'm not going to read those aloud. They will be on the screen right now, and you can read them in your free time. Anyways. In the last part, we started reading Dune Roller, which is a novelette by Julian May. Now, we haven't gotten very far, and so far, a meteorite fell into a pool of water, and apparently Dr. Thorne just discovered it, or he found something unique. And we are going to continue here. And he was surprised by how the surface was not scoured or scarred by the sand. Okay. He tapped the bottom of the net until the drop fell into an empty collecting bottle and admired it for a minute. It would be a pretty addition to his collection of useless miscellanea. He might put it in a little bottle between the tooled brass yak bell and the 6-inch copper sulfate crystal. He was collecting his equipment and getting ready to leave when the boat came. It swept up out of the north and nosed in among the sandbars offshore. A dignified 40-foot Matthews cruiser named Carlin, which belonged to his friend Kirk McInes. "Oi, Mac," Dr. Thorne yelled cordially. "Look out for the new bar the storm brought in." A figure on the flying bridge of the boat waved briefly and howled something unintelligible around a pipe. Page. Clamped in his teeth. The cruiser swung about and the mutter of her motors died gently. She lay rocking in the little waves a few hundred feet offshore. After a short pause, a yellow rubber raft dropped over the stern. Good old Mac, thought Thorne. The little ex-engineer with that Skye Terrier mustache and the magnificent boat visit him regularly, bringing the mail and his copy of the Biological Review, or bottled goods of a chemistry designed to prevent isolated scientists from catching cold. He was a frequent and welcome visitor, but he had always come alone. Previous to this, well, said Dr. Thorne, and then looked again. The girl was sitting in the stern of the raft, while McInes battled deftly, and as they drew closer, Thorne saw that her hair was dark and curly. She wore a spotless white playsuit, and a deep blue handkerchief was knotted loosely around her throat. She was looking at him, and for the first time he had qualms about the Hawaiian shorts. The yellow flank of the raft grated on the stony beach. McInes, 60 and grizzled, a venerable briar between his teeth, climbed out of and wrung Thorne's hand. Brought you a visitor this time, Ian. Real company. Jean. This gentleman is in the shorts and fishing creel is Dr. Ian Thorne, the distinguished writer and lecturer. He writes books about dune ecology, whatever that is. Ian, my niece, Miss Wright. Thorne murmured politely, "Why, that old scoundrel, that sly old dog, but she was pretty all right." "How engaging," smiled the girl, an ecologist with a leer. Dr. Thorne's face abruptly attempted to adopt the uh, protective coloration of his shorts. He said, "We're really not bad fellows at heart, Miss Wright. It's the fresh air that gives us the pointed ears." "I see," she said, in a tone that made Thorne wonder just how much she saw. "Were you collecting specimens here today, Dr. Thorne?" "Not exactly. You see, I'm preparing a chapter on the ecology of beach pool associations, and this little pool here is my guinea pig. The sandbar on the lakeside will grow until the pool is completely cut off. As its stagnation increases, progressive forms of plants and animal life rather, will inhabit it. Algae, beetles, larvae, and so forth. If we have calm weather for the next few weeks, I can get an excellent cross-section of the the plant animal societies which develop in this type of an environment. The chapter on the pool is one in a book I'm doing on ecological studies of the Michigan State dunes. All you have to do is charge him up," McInes remarked, yawning largely, "and he's on the air for the rest of the day." He pulled the raft up onto the sand and took out a flat package. "I brought you a present, if you're interested." "What is it?" "The mail? Something a heck of a lot more digestible. A brace of sirloins. I persuaded Jean to come along today to do them up for us. I've tasted your cooking. I can burn a chop as well as the next man," Thorne protested with dignity. "But I think I'll concede the point. I was finished here. Shall we go right down to the shack? I live just down the shore, Miss Wright, in a place perched on top of a sand dune. It's rugged, but it's home." McInes chuckled and led the way along the firm, damp sand near the water's edge. In some places, the tree-crowned dunes seemed to come down almost to the beach level. Juniper and pines and heavy undergrowth were the only thing holding the vast creeping monster, which are the traveling dunes. Without their green chains, they swept over farms and forests, leaving dead trees and silver-scoured boards in their wake. The three of them cut inland and circled a great narrow-necked valley which widened out among the high sand hills. It was a barren, eerie place of sharp wind-abraded stumps and silent white spaces. "A sand blow," said Thorne. The winds do it. Those dunes at the end of the valley in there are moving. See the dead trees? The dead trees. The hills buried them years ago and then moved on and left the skeletons. These are probably young oaks." "Poor things," said the girl as they moved on. Then the dismal blow was gone. The green hills, with scarcely a show of sand, lowered over them. At the top of the largest stood Thorne's lodge, its rustic exterior blending inconspicuously into the conifers and maples which surrounded it on three sides. The front of the house was banked with yew and prostrate juniper for sand control. The stairway of hewn logs came down the slope of the dune. At its foot stood a wooden bench, a high green pump, and an old ship's bell on a pole. A dune's doorbell, Jean exclaimed, setting the rope. Nobody home yet, Thorne laughed. But that's the shack up there. Yeah, said McInes sourly, and 133 steps to the top. Later they sat in a comfortable rattan chair on the porch, while Thorne manipulated siphon and glasses. You really understand yourself, Dr. Thorne, the girl said. This is no shack, it's a real home. A lodge in the pines. Be it ever so humble, he smiled. I came up here to buy a 2x4 cabin to park my typewriter and microscopes in, and a guy wished this young chalet off on me. The view is magnificent. You can see for miles. But when the wind blows, a gale off the lake, you think the house is going to be carried away. It's just the thing for my work. Though no neighbors, not many picnickers, not even a decent road. I have to drive my Jeep down the beach for a couple of miles before I can hit a cow path leading to the country, the county trunk. No telephones either. And I have my own little generating plant out back, or there wouldn't be any electricity. No phone? Jean frowned. But Uncle Kirk said he talks to you every day. I don't understand. Come out here, he invited mysteriously. I'll show you something. He led the way to a tiny room with huge windows, which lay just off the living room. Radio equipment stood on a desk and lined the walls. A large plaster model of a grasshopper squatting on the transmitter rack wore a pair of headphones. Ham radio used to be my hobby when I was a kid, he said, and now it keeps me in touch with the outside world. I met Mac over the air long before I ever saw him in the flesh. You must have seen his station at home, and I think he even has a little low-power rig on the cruiser. I've seen that. Do you mean he can talk to you anytime he wants to? Well, it's not like a telephone, Thorne admitted. The other fellow has to be listening for you on your frequency, but your uncle and I keep a regular schedule every evening and sometimes in the morning, and hams in other parts of the country are very obliged in letting me talk to my friends and colleagues. It works out nicely all the way around. Uncle Kirk has represented you in all sorts of scientific anchorite. Uncle Kirk has represented you as a sort of scientific anchorite, she said, lifting the microscope and running her fingers over the smooth chrome. But I'm beginning to think he was wrong. Maybe, he said quietly, maybe not. I managed to get along. The station is a big help in overcoming the isolation, but there are other things. Shall we be getting back to the drinks? She put down the microphone. Oh, that was a microphone that she was holding, not a microscope. The microphone. Okay, wait. She put down the microphone and looked at him oddly. If you like, thank you for showing me your station. Think nothing of it. If you're ever in a jam, just howl for W8 Dog Z Victor on 10 meters. All right, she said. I think that's wait, W8. Okay. All right, she said to him. If I ever am, she turned and walked out of the door. The casual remark had been about to make. Wait a minute. The casual remark he had made about to. Wait, what? Sorry. The casual remark he had been about to make died on his lips, and suddenly, All of the loneliness of his life in the dunes loomed up around him like the barren walls of the sand blow. And he was standing there with the dead trees around, all around, and the living green forever out of reach. This scotch tastes like iodine, said McInes from the porch. Thorne left the little room and closed the door behind him. It's the only alcohol in the house, unless you want to try my specimen pickle, said Thorne, dropping back into his chair. As for the flavor, you should know you brought the bottle over yourself last week. The girl took Thorne's creel and began to arrange the bottles in a row on the table. Algae, beetles, and some horrid little things that squirmed when you shook them. Ugh. What's this? She asked cautiously, holding the bottle with the amber drop. Something I found in my beach pool this afternoon. I don't know what it is. Rock crystal, perhaps, or somebody's drowned jewelry. I think it's rather pretty, she said admiringly. It reminds me of something with that little tail. I know. Prince Rupert's drop. Prince Rupert drops. They look just like this, only they're a bit smaller and have an air bubble in them. When you crack the little tail off them, the whole drop flies to powder. She shrugged vaguely. Strain or something. I never saw one that had color like this, though. It's almost like a piece of Venetian glass. Keep it if you like, Thorne offered. McInes poured himself another finger and thumb of scotch and scrupulously added 2 drops of soda. In the center of the table, the small amber eye winked faintly in the sunlight. Tommy Ditburner liked to walk down the shore after dinner and watch the sand toads play. There were hundreds of them that came out to feed as soon as dusk fell. Little silvery gray creatures with big jewel eyes that swam in the mirror of the water or sat quietly on his hand when he caught them. There were all sizes, from big fellows over 4 inches long to tiny ones that could perch comfortably on his thumbnail. Tommy came to Port Grand every August and lived in a resort near the town. He knew he was not supposed to go too far from the cottage, but it seemed to him that there were always more and bigger toads just a little further down the shore. He would go just down to the sand spit, and that was all. Well, maybe to that piece of driftwood down there. He wasn't lost like his mother said he would be if he went too far. He knew where he was. He was almost to the Bugman's house. He was funny. He lived by himself and never talked to anyone. At least that's what the kids said. But Tommy wasn't too sure about that. Once last week, the Bugman and the pretty lady with black hair had been hiking in the dunes near Tommy's cottage, and Tommy had seen him kiss her. Boy, that had been something to tell the kids. Here was the driftwood, and it was getting dark. He had been gone since 6 o'clock, and if he didn't get home, Mom was going to give it to him all right. The toads were thicker than ever, and he had to walk carefully to avoid stepping on any of them. Suddenly, he saw one lying in the sand down near the water's edge. It was on its back and kicking feebly. He knelt down and peered closely at it. Sick, he described, probing it with a finger. The animal winced from the touch, and its eyes were filmed with pain, but it wasn't dead yet. He picked it up carefully with both hands and scrambled over the top of the low shore dune to the foot of the great hill where the Bugman lived. Thorne opened the door and stared astonished at the little boy and wondered whether or not to laugh. Sweat from the exertion of climbing the 133 steps had trickled down from his hair, making little stripes of cleanliness on the side of his face. His t-shirt had parted company from the belt of his jeans. He held out the toad in front of him. There's this here toad I found, he gasped breathlessly. I think it's sick. Without a word, Thorne opened the door and motioned the boy in. They went into the workroom together. Can you fix it up, mister? Asked the boy. Now I'll have to see what's wrong first. You go wash your face in the kitchen and take a Coke out of the icebox while I look it over. He stretched it out on the table for examination. The abdomen was swollen and discolored, and even as he watched it, the swelling movement of the floor of the mouth faltered and stopped, and the animal did not move again. It's dead, ain't it? Said a voice behind Thorne. I'm afraid so, Sonny. It must have been nearly dead when you found it. The boy nodded gravely. He looked at it silently for a moment and said, What was the matter with it, mister? I could tell if I dissected it, you know. What that is, don't you? The boy shook his head. Well, sometimes by looking inside of the sick thing that has died, you can find out what was wrong. Would you like to watch me do it? I guess so. Scalpel. Okay. Scalpel and dissecting needle flashed under the table light. Thorne worked quickly, glancing at the boy now and then out of the corner of his eye. The instruments slicked within the redness of the incision and parted the oddly darkened and twisted organs. Thorne stared. There he arose and smiled kindly at the young face before him. It died of cessation of cardiac activity, young fellow. I think you'd better be headed for home now. It's getting dark, and your mother will be worried about you. You wouldn't want her to think anything had happened to you, would you? I don't think so. A big boy like you doesn't worry his mother. What's a cardiac? Asked the boy, looking back over his shoulder at the toad Thorne. As Thorne let him out. Means pertaining to the heart, said Thorne. Say, I'll tell you what. We'll drive home in my Jeep. Would you like that? I guess so. The screen door slammed behind them. The kid would forget the toad quickly enough, Thorne told himself. He couldn't have seen what was inside it anyways. In the lodge later, under the single little light, Thorne preserved the body of the toad in alcohol. Beside him on the table gleamed two tiny amber drops with tails, which he had removed from the seared and ruptured remains of the toad's stomach. The marine chronometer on the wall of Thorne's amateur station read 5:15. His receiver said to him, I have to sign off now. The missus is hollering up that she wants me to see to the windows before supper. I'll look for you tomorrow. This is W8GB over, so WSDVZ, and W8GB is out and clear. Good night, Thorne. Thorne said, Good night, Mac. WSDVZ, out and clear, and let the power die in his tubes. He lit a cigarette and stood looking out of the window. In the blue sky over the lake hung a single giant white thunderhead. It was like a marble spray billow, ponderous and sullen. The rising wind slipped whistling through the stiff branches of the evergreen trees on the dune, and dimly, through the glass, he could hear the sound of the waves. He moped around inadequately after supper and waited for something to happen. He typed up the day's notes, tidied the workroom, tried to read a magazine, and then thought about Jean. She was a sweet kid, but he didn't love her. She didn't understand. The sand walls seemed to be going up around him again. He wasn't among the dead trees. He was one of them, rooted in the sand, with the living greenness stripped from his heart. Oh, what the heck! The magazine flew across the room. and disappeared behind the couch in a flutter of white pages. He stormed to the workroom, bumped the shelf, and set the specimens in their bottles swaying sadly to and fro. In the second bottle, from the end right-hand side, was a toad. In the third were two small amber drops with tails, whose labels said, "You tell me, 8557." Interest stirred. Now there was a funny thing he had almost forgotten. The beads, it would seem, had been the cause of the toad's death. They had evidently affected the stomach and the surrounding tissue before they had a chance to pass through the digestive tract. Fast work. He picked up the second bottle and moved it gently. The pale little thing inside rotated until the incision, with all the twisting organs plainly visible inside, facing him, Willie Seppel would have liked to see this. Too bad he was across the state in Ann Arbor. We are going to have to stop this here. We've been reading from Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Stories Not for the Nervous, and we've been reading Dune Roller by Julian May. If you like this content, then make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. Also, if you want to support me in any way, all the information will be in the description below, along with a link to the Discord server. If you like, okay. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.